This video will be explaining how to use the report option under the RSM program to gain access to the information within the RSM program and the scales themselves. To begin, let's go ahead and just click on the report option. And in here you're going to see the different options available that we will go through individually to determine which one will be best for whatever purpose you need and how the data will be represented. So if we start in all data records, we're going to see a drop-down menu that has report data that we can manually set up. We can load a template, and then if we set up a data setup, like if we select PLU here and we hit load, we'll have a bunch of information over here in the not used section that's related to the data that's inside RSM. Now, navigating through each of these individually would be a considerable amount of time, but they're usually very identifiable. If we go up to the front, we'll see the number, which is likely going to be the PLU number. So if we wanted to add that to this one that we're creating, we'll hit add, and you'll see it loaded over into this right side. And then let's say we wanted the department number, because that'll tell us which department it is. We can add that as well. You can see if it's active or not, and then we'll have line 1 and line 2. Now these are the trickiest ones. Line 1 and line 2 and the ones going beyond that are referring to the commodity name. So we're going to hit line 1 and add line 2. We don't need to add the font necessarily, but it could be used if we're doing importing or exporting. That information may be useful to the program. We'll continue to look for other data. There's a lot of lines that could be used in the commodity name, so you'll see a lot of repeated ones. It's the same way for the ingredients section further down the list, but for now we'll just want to check out the price, because that's pretty obvious. We'll need that. The mode, which will determine if it's by pound or by weight. And then you have your tears if you need your tears, the quantity number, the symbol, all these other data that can be used if necessary, if it's inside of the scale and that data is there. So you have like the sell by date and the sell by data and the sell by time. They all have different functions and usage. You know, the barcode type, the flags, all of these can be used. Barcode data is usually related to the item code information, which usually follows the PLU, but in case it's different, we're going to add that one to our listing here. You have all these other things that you can apply to this list, but for now a lot of these aren't going to be used, along with the nutrition further down. And then you'll get into the images and the ingredient sections, and it'll tell you the link number that it'll be for that information. So for the most part, it's usually under 100. Typically before the nutrition is all the data that will be usually gained. Below like 55 is the data that will be used primarily whenever dealing with a site. And then over here you can see if you want it for the entire store, if you want it for just a department. There's no device option under this section, so let's say we just want to do it under the production department. We can have it ascending or descending, but we can hit this display button right here, and it's going to process all of the PLU records in the RSM program. And then it will present a list of information. Typically when the RSM program does this lockup, it's when it's processing still. You just have to let it go. It's still working in the background. You'll know when it's not working or still working, depending on just your usability of it. And here we're going to see where we have the number, which is the PLU number, the department number, which is the production department number 1, the commodity lines 1 and 2, so like we have our pork sausage sample frozen, and the 2Z mile lengths 9 count, however the store used that information. And we see where some of these items had pricing and others did not. They were labeling products for boxing and not for information purposes specifically. It was not ever priced with the label, so the labels were used for identifying for the customer at this location. And then you'll see if it's by piece or by pound with that mode option. And then you have the barcode data, which is usually the item code data if they're scanning barcode information. And then here we can have it show the grid or not show the grid in the preview. And this is how it would print if we were to, or save if we wanted it to. This is how it would print or save depending on what files type we chose and how it would look. And then we can see where it does have the grid, and normally that's better because it's easier to read and it will give the description across the top. So from here we can hit print if we wanted it to print, or we can save it in a different file type. Usually Excel is the best save, and it saves the same way where you choose a location, and what you want to save and the name. We'll just cancel this for now. And then when you're done with this, you can then save this template to report this data again at another time inside of the report option. You can see that there's some that's already made that I have used in the past, and then there's generic ones that are put into the program by the RSM/Digi engineers whenever it gets downloaded. You can then load a template too if you wanted to load one from a previous one. So if we save this one and we wanted to reload it, we would do so, but I'm just going to load another one, and it's going to load into the department, into the information what that template is, and then you can continue to just display it again, and it will do the same way. Whether or not that load is the INI file is for this store, it will still load the data based on what was chosen for that INI file. And you're going to see here that it's going to be the same thing, except the order is going to be a little different, and you're going to have different informations within that listing based on whatever that store needed for that INI file. And that would explain the most usage out of all data records. This is very good for the customer to go through and see what they have and what they're using, and they can go through and delete those PLUs if they don't use them anymore, and update pricing if the pricing is different. This is a really good option for them to get through and get their data off of the RSM program and what they're loading into the scales. Under price discrepancy, this is where you would choose a department or store to see if there's any discrepancy between the scale and the RSM program. But as you can see, our communication for RSM is not available. For our scale is not available, so it's going to give us an error, and it won't be able to give us our discrepancy report. So this would determine the differences between the scale and the program, and it will give you an error for each scale in that department that it has, and it'll show you here the information on one and then the information on another when it has those pricings, if it's available. We have totals by PLU, which is very similar to the all data. The difference is the limited ability. This is just the totals, which will tell you basically the labels that are being printed at the scale, but you need a scale to be communicating, because the scale runs that tally for it to pull that data. Otherwise, you're going to be getting these errors as well, but this will appear in a window. The running totals, if you will, of the items that are being printed, and it'll show you that information here. So if the store is recognizing that they don't feel like enough of a type of product is being put on the shelf, they can come here and see how many labels are being printed, and see if it's not making it to the scale, or not making it to the product container, or anything along those lines, or if there's an abundance of label usage, they can determine where it's coming from and what department. It's a workaround for that information. 4600 totals usually isn't used. It's primarily done with the 4600 auto wrapper, so this won't have any usage at this location. And clerk totals is dealing with if this were to be used as a accumulation scale, or I should say a cash register, it'll state the totals of that clerk's transactions, but that setup normally isn't isn't used on our scales and will never be accessed, and it's the same way for clerk receipt totals. So primarily you'll be dealing with all data records, price discrepancy, and totals by PLU whenever you're in the report section. And those explanations are pretty clear in their usage and will always be able to be accessed by the customer or the technician for providing the information within RSM and the scale when needed.